Good evening. My name is Christina Bennett. This is my mini project presentation 3 for qualitative methods KIN 717. This is the cumulative research. So as a little bit of continuing background, USTA's flagship program for adult recreational tennis participation is called USTA League. It's team-based play. Everyone's 18 or over. Each team are led by what we call captains. They're volunteers, and that's the extent of over 1,500 unique captains each year. And each captain leads an average of 4 teams per year. That's just in the 6 states in New England. So as a staff, USTA New England need to determine the status of the experience of the current captains and some players maybe who refuse to captain in order to build a program to retain more, to recruit more for the future health of our leagues. So therefore, the purpose is to determine volunteer motivations for adult recreational league tennis captains. So officially, the purpose of this study is to determine the motivational factors of New England's USTA League volunteer captains, and also to identify improved systematic processes for the governing bodies, meaning USTA specifically in this case, of tennis to improve the experience and subsequent retention and recruitment of the volunteers. These two items are really separate, and I wanted to look at both of them because they're so tightly linked. If the motivation of the volunteer is better understood, then the governing bodies can create these improved experiences to help the captains do what they want to do and just make the job easier for them. So for my data analysis, I wanted to use an inductive form of analysis because I wanted to talk to people, watch people do the observations, and then I wanted to kind of gather the themes. So I did group characteristic sampling with purposeful random sampling to try to ascertain some of my information. The first thing I did was observe, and I went to locations and I just watched. And I had a lot of difficulty not assessing emotions to the observations. For instance, if somebody walked up purposefully or fast towards staff and they had a disgruntled look on their face, I would assume that they were angry. And that's not necessarily the case. So I was trying to stop putting those emotions in there. So what I saw was that the captains were interactive with staff and with players. They would walk back and forth between the groups talking. They carried clipboards or notebooks. They wrote down notes. They flipped the pages. They studied them. They were the people who walked in and found a location for the team to set up, whether it was under some trees or a lot of times they brought tents. They typically were those. And they also typically arrived before the other players and they would interact with staff first. As an unintended observation in all of this, I did notice that captains that had shirts or hats labeled captain seemed more assertive. And I'm not trying to put an emotion with it, but they stood closer. They leaned in more. They spoke louder and more forcefully when there was a disagreement. It's a study for a different time, but I found that a very interesting piece of the observations. So the second piece of my data was the focus group and the focus group themes. The guided focus group interview was a bit of a challenge for me to keep positive. The captains were aware of my position at USTA New England, and they wanted to use this focus group as an opportunity to kind of complain and feed off of each other. So I had to keep taking them back to the questions that I was asking, and these were the 3 major themes and some sub themes. So community was the first. They wanted to do activities with their friends, their families, and share experiences, and tennis happened to be the common ground. Communication kept coming up, but the more I thought about it and the more I read through all the transcripts, it's all about the organization of what they have to do. There are a lot of moving pieces, a lot of weekly requirements, a lot of commitment, and communication was a part of it, but overall it was an organization piece. And then knowing what to do. The education of the players who refuse to be captains need to understand what it's like to be a captain and how hard it is. And the clubs and facilities need some more information. And then the captains themselves, especially the new ones, need a lot more information. So there's a big education piece. So those were the 3 themes that came out of the focus group. So this was a partial transcript of my focus group. I had 3 members in the focus groups. They're labeled as A1, A2, and A3. And I first asked them, what challenges do you regularly experience as a captain? All of these were captains, no non-playing captains in this group. And they kind of focused on getting players to answer them and talk to them and get back to them when they were trying to do lineups. And then I realized as I was talking to them that I wasn't sure if it was the actual communication. Do we need to figure out, do they do text messages or emails or what's better? Or was it the commitment to the team? And so I did a follow-up question on that. And they did a great job answering. I don't know that there's a great answer to that second question. How do you get more people to be more committed to a team? But again, that seemed to be the major theme with the community piece. So overall, for my interviews, I interviewed one male captain, one female captain, and one tennis player that played on teams but has never captained and refuses to captain. And again, the themes became community, organization, education. We kept talking about how one of the captains brought up that captains are people collectors. They love the relationship building piece and that they want to feel useful and helpful. They want to build communities and friendships that last a lifetime. And some of the negative aspects of the volunteer experiences need to be outweighed by the impact that they make on the tennis community. And it needs to be easier. The communication to players about what captains go through and how it works. The job of a captain needs to be easier. And that was all seen through these themes of community, the organization piece, and then the education piece. So this was one of the pieces of the interview transcript from one of my captains. It was a female captain. She's captained several teams. She's captained for 6 years. And I asked her what challenges she regularly experiences as a captain, which is the same question that I used in the transcript of the focus group that I showed you earlier. And she captains some teams that she has very strong intentions to go to nationals, which are super competitive teams, and then some for fun teams. And she said, even though she's got a lot of the same players and she knows a lot of them, that again, this not answering, not texting back, canceling at the last minute was a problem. And so I asked her how a people collector factored into that. And we had been discussing people collectors for a while and the community organization piece of it. And she did say that the people that she was friends with, that she had been friends with for a while, were the ones that when she was in a pinch and needed a lineup or needed somebody to play last minute, she could call, and that was really helpful. So I realized that the relationship building is also a really large piece of this. And then I learned through all of this that the answers that they give are a lot of the symptoms and not the true cause. They talk about communicating and not texting back, but the real problem is either the commitment to the team or the players don't have the relationship with the other players the way maybe they should or they could. It could be better, more enhanced. So I thought that was an interesting area to focus on. So how did we check the trustworthiness of the information that we got? We went back to the research and I checked with volunteer organizations that were nonprofit, sports organizations, and a lot of it was along the same lines. Community impact, making a difference, creating a family, being a leader in an organization. Those were all major themes in research in areas other than tennis. I also did a quick survey of the focus group and the interview participants, and they agreed with the findings in the categories that I had. And then also during a staff meeting with my local league coordinators, there are 10 of them. I did a quick run through of what I did, and they also agreed with the categories that I had. So the overall results, what does this all mean? So for my first research question of determine the motivational factors of New England USTA's league volunteer captains, community impact, they need to feel needed and be useful, and they want to share experiences with friends. It's all about relationships. It is about lifetime experiences and continuing in a community where they live and work. And then identify improved systematic processes for governing bodies of tennis to improve the experience and subsequent retention and recruitment of volunteers. The communication, education, and organization pieces were the major thoughts on how we can help the captains make their jobs easier. So as a part of the discussion that we have, I did realize that these captains, they are very committed. They're there early, they're handling the things for their teams, they are taking care of things. They are passionate, sometimes opinionated, and they like to play tennis. And also, they give all they have to the game and to their teams, and sometimes it kills them on the court. Copyright Gary Patterson on those pictures. All right. And these are the references for this particular presentation. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the court.